Hey guys, this is Riker. There is a game news summary video. We discuss what happened this week. This week's topics include the Chinese takeover of PC gaming, loot box government crackdowns about to become a reality, Blizzard requiring that BlizzCon goers have phones this year, and more. As always, discussion timestamps can be found in the video description. But right before you skip ahead, just a quick reminder to ring that sub notification bell to be alerted of new Saturday episodes. In our first quick story this week, we got a new cinematic, some new footage of the Final Fantasy VII remake. Apparently more details will come in June. Do check out the video if you haven't, it's looking fantastic. Now on to our first major story. The Chinese PC gaming market continues to grow. And some people are starting to become concerned about whether developers are going to start targeting the Chinese audience at the expense of a Western audience. According to the leading Asian game market research and consulting firm, by the year 2023, there will be an estimated 354 million PC gamers playing online games in China. To put that into perspective, that's more Chinese PC gamers than there are people living in the USA. Now, it's great that PC gaming is doing so well. As a PC gamer, I obviously want to see the platform thrive. I remember a decade or two ago when, the generation of Xbox 360, I think, there was this whole rumor of PC gaming is dying, PC gaming is dead, consoles are taking over. Yeah, that happened. But that does make me wonder, if China becomes the driving market force behind PC gaming, where's that going to take PC gaming? Now, according to Nintendo president Shuntaro Furukawa, the Chinese games market is almost entirely PC games and mobile games. Console gaming just isn't really a big thing over there. And so in case I haven't made myself clear, the concern here is that if you are a developer creating PC games and you know that the vast majority of PC gamers are Chinese, then doesn't it make good business sense to tailor your game such that a Chinese market will accept it, will like it? Now, in case you're wondering what are the ramifications of that, well, they're largely twofold. One is in the monetization schemes and one is in the actual content of the game. Now, when it comes to monetization, freemium games are the status quo in China. The Chinese market completely accepts games that are effectively pay to win. Diablo 3 itself is a free-to-play game in China with microtransactions. You can literally buy XP boosts in Diablo 3 in China. As for the actual game content side of things, China's Ministry of Culture specifically forbids some very unspecific things. For instance, they ban anything that violates China's policy on religion by promoting cults or superstitions. It's vague. What does that mean? You'll note that a lot of games, when ported or localized to China, will remove skeletons by putting skin on them. They'll remove any depiction of bones, depictions of gore, and that's not because China explicitly forbids these things, but it's developers and publishers self-censoring because China's rules are so ephemeral and they just don't want to risk it. They just want to get the game approved in China as quickly as possible without it having to go through review. So we see this sweeping self-censorship. And at what point will developers stop making two versions of games, one for the West and one for China? The bigger the Chinese market gets, the greater it overshadows a Western market, the less it makes sense to invest resources into developing an entirely separate version of the game for the West. Take Diablo Immortal, for instance. We don't know all that much about Diablo Immortal, but it was presented as a fun for the whole family kind of game, when Diablo has always been a mature-rated game. Is Immortal going to hold back on certain things because it's being co-created by a Chinese company and evidently the Chinese market is very important to it? I imagine we won't have to wait too much longer to find out. On to our next major story, loot boxes. We've been talking about loot boxes and the government crackdown on loot boxes for well over a year now. Well, this week, U.S. Senator Josh Hawley announced a bill that would ban loot boxes and pay-to-win microtransactions in games played by minors. This will include games that are designed for kids under 18 years of age, as well as games, quote, whose developers knowingly allow minor players to engage in microtransactions. The bill, called the Protecting Children from Abusive Games Act, will be introduced to the U.S. Senate soon. In a press release, Hawley said, quote, when a game is designed for kids, game developers shouldn't be allowed to monetize addiction. And when kids play games designed for adults, they should be walled off from compulsive microtransactions. Game developers who knowingly exploit children should face legal consequences. Now, I feel whenever we've discussed government intervention in this sort of thing, responses have been mixed. Some people are for it. They're for whatever means necessary to end the predatory practices of certain game developers and publishers. But other people feel that we don't want more government regulation. We don't want more government interference. This is going to take us down a slippery slope. For instance, how do you address, quote, developers knowingly allowing minor players to engage in MTX? Does that mean that the game will have to have some way to verify your real identity and age? Because right now, whenever you go to a website or sign up to a service and it asks you to insert your date of birth, everyone just scrolls through and puts whatever random thing that puts them over 18 years old, right? But imagine having to tie your real ID to a game service. I would imagine a lot of people would be unhappy about that. But I leave the question to you folks. What do you think? Is this a good development, a bad development, and why? Sound off in the comments. All right, on to our next big story about BlizzCon tickets and requiring a phone to go to BlizzCon. On the information page for BlizzCon, it states you'll need the AXS mobile app to get into the show. To pick up your badge at registration this year, you'll need to download the AXS mobile app. The app displays a QR code, one code for all of your tickets, which changes at regular intervals to help guard against dupes and fraud. Because of that, we won't be able to accept paper tickets, confirmation emails, or screenshots/photos of the QR code at BlizzCon registration. So this became a big kerfuffle, and it's bad optics for Blizzard. I mean, the memes have just finally died down about, don't you guys have phones? And now this? But the story didn't end there. People began to dig into this AXS app. And then a narrative began to be spun about the app stealing your information. A story blew up about all the permissions that the app requires of you, about how the app can collect your first name, last name, precise location through GPS, Wi-Fi, your IP address, your operating system, even your billing address, credit card number, security code, mailing address, phone number, email address, and many other things. It was pointed out that in the privacy policy of the AXS app, it says, quote, we reserve the right to share your personal information with our current or future affiliated entities, subsidiaries, and parent companies. We may also share your personal information and other information with trusted third parties, such as our partners, sponsors, or their affiliates and subsidiaries, and other related entities for marketing, advertising, or other commercial purpose. And we may occasionally allow third parties to access certain sites for marketing purposes. Sounds really bad. People were quick to jump on the Blizzard hate bandwagon, and this story blew up. And I'm gonna sound like I'm defending Blizzard here, but it's really that I want criticism to be doled out where criticism is due, because when we start getting upset over things that are blown way out of proportion, that weakens our legitimate arguments. So in many ways, the app acts as a form of authenticator. We have Blizzard authenticators either as actual little doodads or on our phones. You press a button and it generates a code. So some people are asking, why couldn't we just use our actual authenticators, our Blizzard ones? Well, it turns out that creating your own form of ticketing app just for BlizzCon is a lot of development time and money. And with something built in-house, you run the risk of failure, of bugs. And do you really want a PR disaster and logistical disaster of a failure of their in-house app while ticketing people on the day of BlizzCon? It's just a lot easier to go with a reputable service, and AXS is actually the second biggest of this form of service, second only to Ticketmaster. Plenty of other outlets use AXS for their ticketing. In fact, the Anaheim Convention Center itself, by default, uses AXS, so it's even possible that Blizzard used AXS because the Anaheim Center either required it or at least recommended it. The Anaheim Center is where BlizzCon is held. I should have specified that. Furthermore, Blizzard clarified, quote, if for some reason you find yourself at the show with a dead mobile device or some other unexpected issue preventing you from accessing the app, don't worry, just head to the solutions desk at registration and they'll help you out. So it seems most people will be taking the express lane of using the app, but if you don't want to use the app, you can probably get by going to the solutions desk. It might just take you a little longer to get through. Furthermore, this whole narrative that they're going to use the app to spy on you throughout your entire stay at the convention. You could install the app as you're waiting in line to scan your ticket, and then uninstall it immediately after they give you your pass. You can have it installed for all of 2 minutes. But really, the big reason here that I feel this is a huge non-story is that the permissions that the app requests really aren't that all uncommon. The note in the privacy policy is not uncommon either. So many apps, so many social media apps especially, request so many permissions, harvest your data, and no one's up in arms about that. But because it's Blizzard, well, we have to hate on Blizzard. Despite most of these people, or a good chunk of these people hating on Blizzard for this, already are giving up their data through other social media or apps or what have you. And that's terrible. Don't get me wrong. I think this whole thing is terrible. But it's not just a Blizzard problem. It's an everyone and everything problem that has been ongoing for years and years and years. We used to be afraid of the government or corporations nefariously finding ways to steal our data. They didn't steal anything. We gave it up to them. In a leaked conversation from Facebook's Mark Zuckerberg and a friend, he said, quote, "Yeah, so if you ever need any info about anyone at Harvard, just ask. I have over 4,000 emails, pictures, addresses, SNS." His friend asks, "What? How'd you manage that one?" Zuckerberg replied, "People just submitted it. I don't know why. They just trust me. Dumb And when you really analyze the permissions that the app is requesting, and you dig into it further, you see that it's not using your permissions or the permissions it requests all the time. In fact, the app even works if you don't permit it the permissions it requests. The AXS app is a general event ticketing app, not a BlizzCon app. Why does it ask for GPS permissions? Well, because if you want to find out what events are in my area, it needs to access your GPS. Why does it access your contacts? Well, if you want a secure way to transfer your ticket to someone you know, it needs access to your contacts. But it's not using them all the time. It's not using these permissions constantly. Does it suck that most free services are only free because we are the product, because they're harvesting and selling our information to advertisers? Absolutely. But is this a story about Blizzard being evil and wanting to harvest and sell our data? No, Blizzard's just looking for a more efficient and secure way to handle BlizzCon ticketing. On to some action RPG lightning news. A new patch has released for Grim Dawn. I'll drop a link to it in the video description. If you are a player, do go ahead and check out what has changed. Next, Titan Quest. An expansion was revealed and released this week with a really cool cinematic trailer. This is the third expansion of Titan Quest, a game that everyone thought was dead, a very old game, a classic action RPG, a precursor to Grim Dawn. In many ways, Grim Dawn is Titan Quest 2. So if you own Titan Quest and you want to go revisit it, now is the best time to do so. A new standalone expansion for Warhammer 40k Inquisitor Martyr has been revealed, titled Warhammer 40k Inquisitor Prophecy. Details in the description. Alright, slowing things down with some Path of Exile news. Community manager Bex is getting the community hyped for the reveal of the upcoming league. She knows how to drum up the community into a frenzy. People are trying to guess the name of the league. She is teasing and teasing and teasing. She first tweeted saying, "We are just over 2 weeks away from announcing our next PoE expansion, May 21st. I can't wait for the carnage of teaser season." She followed up with a tweet saying, "Yesterday's tweet has sent people into a frenzy about whether PoE's upcoming league is called Carnage. My tweet has people convinced it both is and isn't the league name based on my trollish history. Schrodinger's league name. I guess the ritual of teasers has begun." And she later tweeted, "Hey, just so you know, and not to be evil and create more misery at all, but I've definitely seen some people correctly guess PoE's upcoming expansion name. What do you folks think? If you had to guess what the name of the next PoE league is, sound off in the comments." Lastly, for PoE, part 2 of the developer Q&A has been released, and I want to call your attention to 2 particular questions. First, master content such as incursion and betrayal can be distracting and disrupts the flow of just grinding maps. Do you have any plans to change this? The reply was, we have an idea for a potential change that we are quite excited about. We want more time to think about it before committing, and so we aren't going to explain it here, but we will follow up in a few weeks if we decide to go ahead with it, and if not, what other steps we'll take regarding this issue. Question 2. Players feel that map sustainability is tied up with betrayal and other master content, making it non-optional. What is your stance on this? Answer. We also have a plan for this that we are considering at the same time as the changed mentioned in the answer to the last question. We'll hopefully post about it within a few weeks. Now, these are issues that the community has been talking about for a while now. So it's certainly exciting to see that not only is this being addressed, that the devs are actively looking for a potential solution. But some people were hoping that we might see it for the coming league, and Chris Wilson had to come in and say, quote, bad launches and leaks happen when there's too much to do at the same time. Taking time away from 3.7 and doing stuff hastily at the last minute is probably the wrong choice. We haven't worked out yet when this potential change is going in though, or even if we're actually committed to doing it yet. So folks, likely will not be for 3.7. On to some Diablo news. Season 17, the season of Nightmares, will be starting on May 17th. Season 17 on May 17th. That's oddly fitting. In the season of Nightmares, everyone will get for free the set bonus of the Legacy of Nightmares set. For full details, you can check out my video discussing Season 17, or also read the Blizzard blog post, link below. I've also posted my Diablo tier list, so do be sure to check that out. But also stay tuned for my Diablo 3 Season 17 tier list video, coming soon. Lastly, for Diablo, Quinn69, who was at one time the biggest Diablo 3 streamer before moving on to other games, stated on his stream that he has been invited by the Diablo team to attend BlizzCon 2019. Now, Quinn is someone who never really seemed to care much about Diablo 2, so they're likely not inviting him because of a Diablo 2 remaster. They might still be remastering Diablo 2, but that's not why they're inviting him. He also doesn't seem to care much for Diablo Immortal, so they wouldn't invite him for that. Really, the only thing that would bring Quinn back to Diablo would be, to my understanding, either an expansion to Diablo 3, which is very unlikely, or Diablo 4, and I was already highly suspecting that Diablo 4 will be revealed this BlizzCon. The fact that they're inviting Quinn is another piece of evidence suggesting that. Now, I've been talking about Diablo 4 for years, and I've always said that, well, it's possible that they're going to reveal it at BlizzCon. This is the first time where I'm saying they will probably be revealing Diablo 4 at BlizzCon 2019. I have never said before, probably. In fact, I'm basically 95% sure that the current plan, which could change, is to reveal Diablo 4 at BlizzCon 2019. And that's going to wrap up this week's video. But do be sure to have checked out last week's video, in which we discussed the very alarming Activision Blizzard financial earnings. Thanks for watching. Special thanks to my Twitch, Patreon, and now YouTube supporters for making these videos possible. If you like what you see on this channel and want to support the creation of more content, you can consider pledging on Patreon or YouTube and unlocking behind-the-scenes content, monthly hangouts, and more. If you enjoyed this video, please share it, check out these other videos, and subscribe to join Riker's Raiders for more gaming content.